Mr. Rand, of course, we want to talk about Marvin Hagler. He recently passed away on Saturday. Terrible to hear of anybody's passing, but some of these sports heroes, sometimes there's a little extra hurt, especially because right away it brings back a gush of memories of why we came to think so highly of them and what they accomplished. We don't really get to know a lot of them personally. Some of them you have, but us, like all I can think of is those 3 rounds with Thomas Hearns, that epic fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, him trading blows with John the Beast Mugabe, the Durant. I mean, there's a lot of them for me, but for you, I'm sure it was a very difficult news to take on Saturday. Can you give us your thoughts on Marvin Hagler as not only a competitor but a human being?
Yeah, he was. What a great fighter, and there's still to this day a lot of people think that he beat Ray Leonard. I was working in Ray Leonard's corner as the inspector, so I was biased. Just being in there listening to Angelo Dundee, but in watching the fight again, I can see where Ray stole some of the rounds. One judge was way off. I think he had it 10 rounds to 5, or it was so far away that I couldn't believe it. Something 118 to something, but anyway, it was it was a bittersweet. Last time I saw him was at the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And it was always very sweet to me, and congratulated me on becoming a member. Just never fought again from that time. The fight everybody remembers, obviously, is the Hearns fight and the Leonard fight. But you brought up John the Beast Mugabe. What a tough guy he was, and that was a great fight too. And he fought Vito Antuofermo, got a bad decision, got a draw there. I thought he won that fight. So. But I have a strange, lasting memory of the Leonard fight, and that was it's weird. I mean, I think of the whole fight, but his ring walk, and I wrote this on Facebook or Twitter or something. He came into Edwin Starr's music, War, What Is It Good For? And it was such a perfect song for him to come into, outside at Caesars, which is still the best venue I've ever worked in, and. And I remember that song so clearly with him walking in.
Yeah, I saw that post. And just to recap of a few things you said, I've watched that fight a lot of times. I'm sure you have too. I score it probably more for Leonard. I think of the 10 times I watched it, I gave Leonard 8 or 9 of those. I just thought, like you said, he stole rounds, but he didn't run and dance. He exchanged with Marvin Hagler. Of course, I'm a big Leonard fan, but he really did throw down with Marvin Hagler, except at times he did have to stick and move because you can't just sit there and trade with the heavy hitting Hagler. But I think he ran. I thought that was unfair when people would say, oh, Leonard just ran too.
The fascinating other part for me that night was I'm in Ray's dressing room, and for a long time it was Angelo, Ray, and myself because I'm watching him have his hands wrapped. And I think now he's probably an older man, obviously, but Little Ray was in there too. So he had just made a 7-Up commercial. I remember that, and it was very intense. And it was in the old Caesars Pavilion, and all there was between Hagler and Leonard was like a plasterboard wall, and so you could hear each other guy, and they were yelling through the walls. And Angelo was yelling at Hagler that he was going to get beat. And those are the memories I have.
That's crazy. That's some smack talk right there. I love it. Right through the walls. Would you put Marvelous Marvin Hagler right up there with other great middleweights like Sugar Ray Robinson and Carlos Monzon, I believe is his name? Would you rate him right up there with those guys? How would you compare him with some of the other great middleweights?
Well, he absolutely, I would say when it comes to middleweights, yes, I would put him up there with I think as I think about it, Carlos Monzon was tremendous. Ray Robinson to this day is still my favorite fighter. And Ray Robinson is a welterweight too. So, but yeah, Marvin was. You got to remember in the first 20 fights of his career, nobody would fight him, and he was held back, and it took him a long time to even get to the championship level. It's just too bad he didn't fight again. I would have loved to have seen that rematch.
Yeah.
Mark, these particular moments that we see here in that you share with us in boxing that stay in your heart and your memory, have you already you don't have to share them, but have you already established them within mixed martial arts? Have those kind of been engraved in your soul as well, equally?
Well, when you look at boxing, you look at MMA. MMA is still a pretty new sport, and when we discussed this a little bit last night, as I thought about it today, I guess the fight that's the most important fight for in a lot of reasons was the opener of our whole with Forrest Griffin and that big fight that was our Trojan horse, as we called it, and that was a very important fight and action packed, and yeah, I think about that fight.
What would you say separated Marvin Hagler from the other boxers? That one unique characteristic that he carried that just wasn't maybe part of everybody else's aura?
I would say his determination, his fierceness, just his whole look. But he came forward the whole time. He was I call him a fighter's fighter. He wasn't dancing around. He just came to fight, and I just admired him very much. And he was more of a left-hand fighter than he was more of a southpaw. So I found him, very special. And I go back. Obviously, everybody loved the Hearns fight, and that was as tough a fight as you'll ever see. But it was pretty special.
Well, definitely nobody had a better seat than you did for these fights. Now, so jealous of that ticket that you posted up. Huh?
I mean, how would I know to save things for 50 years?
Yeah.
That was 35 years ago. But I got it. I have it on my desk here.
Like, I haven't seen enough Marc Ratner gems, and then I saw that one. And then, of course, hearing this story about them yelling through the walls, and so crazy, that you've been able to be up close like that. And then even when you said the Caesars Pavilion, I got there and I got to see pro wrestling there. And what a special place. And I hope now that Las Vegas is kind of opening things up, someone comes up with maybe some sort of an idea to do something like that again. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I think for the most part, with the exception of old Fan Man crashing the party, you like the outdoor boxing. It made sense, right? This is the perfect wet city with the type of weather, especially the months of like May to September, where it can happen.
Oh, absolutely. There was just a special aura. There was just such an iconic place, and we saw so many great fights. Even Ali Holmes fought there, and I just think of all that. We also had outdoor venues at the Hilton and the Dunes, so but not since then. But Caesars was special.
We wanted to ask you a few questions about MMA. What's that?
Okay. I just thought about it. Even the Mirage had Duran and Leonard fight there to open it up.
Yeah, I think Tyson and Razor Reddick fought outdoors at the Mirage, right?
I believe they did, and absolutely. The Pavilion was just a small place. I saw Holmes fight Norton there, and I think it was a 15-round fight. So, it was a tennis pavilion that was great for boxing.
Technically, when the UFC has a show at Allegiant Stadium, they can still open up the roof, and we'll have technically an outdoor venue that particularly night. So maybe we'll have a little bit of a taste of it then.
Yeah, that's a big place. It has to be the right fight, but I would love for us to go there. The stadium is so beautiful inside. I don't know if you guys have been able to walk through it yet, but it's very special. I was able to work all 8 Raider games in a position in the press box, and it's a marvelous place to be.
We look forward to it. Switching to MMA, wanted to ask you about these last few weeks, starting with the Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling fight, and then of course this past Saturday we had Eric Anders, Darren Stewart, Leon Edwards, and Belal Muhammad. So one by one with Yan and Sterling, I've already heard you state that you feel like the way it was handled was correct. Petr Yan was disqualified because of an intentional blow the illegal knee. So the key word being intentional. That's basically once the foul's committed, the most important thing, aside from when it happened, whether we're going to get to the scorecards or not, if it's an accidental, we start the flow chart with accidental and intentional, correct?
What we start with is the referee's judgment. That's the most important thing, and he's going to determine in his mind whether it was intentional or accidental, and it certainly changes the way the fight scored or the outcome. In the Yan fight, Mark Smith was the referee, and he felt that the knee was intentional, and therefore, because Sterling couldn't go forward, that became a disqualification. Now the difference. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead and finish, sir.
Oh, and the difference in last Saturday's fight was that Herb Dean felt that maybe the fighter that it was the big football player who landed the knee, and the other fighter was putting his hand up and down and might have baited him into that knee, and he felt it was an accident, and therefore it became a no contest or no decision. And if it would have went to the 2 rounds full, we would have went to the scorecards.
Okay, so back to the Yan and Aljamain Sterling fight. In that one, his knee was down for a long time. Now, if we're all sitting around, us three, Mark Smith, a few other hardcores, we'd all come to the conclusion of, come on, why would Petr Yan intentionally knee him and risk his belt? I mean, and it's true, really, it's hard to believe that he would, but in my opinion, like negligence and ignorance towards the rules, whether it's not knowing them pre-fight or being in a fog because of the fight at that particular moment, just not thinking clearly, I don't think that should excuse you from the fact that it was as blatant as can be. And at that point in time, the other fighters compromised. It seems like that is the only way to go, is to disqualify a fighter like Petr Yan. Would you not agree? I mean, it'd be hard to paint that as accidental.
I completely agree. Absolutely. I would say that Aljamain's knee was down for, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds. There was no question it wasn't coming up. And he hit him in the head and kneed him in the head. And right from the beginning, I knew it was going to be a DQ. I was thinking that way, and that was the correct decision.
Do you think that the unified rules of MMA need to be a little bit more specific? Like, I was reading them this morning again, and they kind of describe what can happen, but it seems like there's just a lot of confusion to the fans, the media, even some of the fighters themselves. They'll even say it, man, we don't know all the rules or whatever. Do you think there needs to be more explicit set of rules in MMA or an amendment that kind of covers this? Because this interpretation thing is kind of, I think, what's really, really confusing people. Big John McCarthy said on his podcast that he would have said it was accidental and that he would have gone to the judges' scorecards. You know, we have 2 highly respected men that have, I say have, John's no longer reffing, but he's reffed thousands of fights. This was Mark's first title fight, but he's reffed a lot of MMA fights. We put him in that position for a reason, but yet they have a difference of opinion on intentional and accidental. So with the wording in the unified rules, could that be a little bit more specific so that there's like no doubt?
I don't believe so. I think you have a gray area there. You always are going to have a judgment call in any sports, and it's to put it in black and white and say this is going to be accidental, it's going to be intentional. Can you read intent? That's really the question. And as John thought that he didn't do it on purpose, and therefore we would have went to the scorecard, scoring the partial round in the 4th round. I don't think it'll ever be clear. I don't know how you can make it in writing, saying that you wouldn't be able to use judgment. I would be, I don't know. I read those rules, and there is some gray area there, and I think it would be hard to say that you can definitively say black and white that this was intentional, this was accidental.
Is that particular rule written to how, for example, if you were to write it, how you would write it, or is there anything that you would add to it?
I'd have to reread it and put my thoughts down. But what I would say is the way it's written, if you deem it's an intentional foul and the fighter can't continue, then you lose by disqualification. That's where the judgment comes in. I don't think that you can. I don't think you can write it in a better way. Now, there's people who are smarter than me. Maybe they can. I would like to see it, but you cannot take judgment out of officiating in any sport.
Why is the referee? There's a sequence where they'll bring the doctor in to see if they're okay to continue. We entrust these referees to stop fights on a dime when somebody isn't, based on their experience and knowledge of. Some of them even fighting themselves, but basically reffing a lot of fights and being able to see if a fighter can continue. Some stop it early from time to time, some stop it late from time to time, but 99% of the time, maybe 95, whatever, they get it right. Is it more of just because that's what the commission rules state? Like, it seems like the doctor asking, are you okay? Are you okay? To me, it almost seems like it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, you could tell Sterling wasn't going to be able to continue in that fight. Do you think the referee maybe should kind of, again, going back to the flow chart, almost get away from the doctor having to give an opinion and maybe his opinion weighing more than the doctor's, whether he thinks the fighter should be able to continue or not?
My belief, if a fighter is compromised with what I would call a closed head injury, possibly a concussion, that you cannot let the fighter go forward, and I would like the doctors to make a real quick decision. Don't ask the fighter if he can go on. A lot of fighters would say yes, and because they don't want to go out that way. And it doesn't matter what the fighter says. I want the doctors to be more definitive. And I'm certainly not an educated doctor guy, but when I see a person compromised, I just soon stop the fight right away. Don't vacillate and have them make a decision. Can you walk? Can you fight again? I think that's wrong.
Mark, you've been a part of a lot of sports, and you're a big sports fan. These things happen in every sport. Every sport has these type of situations that go on. So I guess my question to you is, when it comes to mixed martial arts and these situations, everybody has an opinion, everybody has a solution, but is there a bit of an overreaction? Because this does happen in a lot of sports, and do you feel like there has to be major change, just a tweak here and there, or is it just kind of on the fighters?
Well, I think that the rules are always evolving. We've been working on getting a glove that's a little more curved so you won't have eye pokes. It's not that easy because you still want to be able to wrestle. But we're constantly looking at the rules, trying to make the judging a little more definitive. It's still a new sport, like I said. It's really, when the UFC was bought by the Fertittas, it was in 2001. It's just 20 years ago. So we still got to be constantly evolving, and but I think we can learn. What made this so different was we had two weeks in a row where there was an illegal knee. So therefore, the whole world gets the whole MMA world starts thinking about this stuff. So there is a little bit of an overreaction. Yes.
I know you got to get going soon. This is the last question, but like, for example, in the NBA, I know that if I'm on the bench and a fight breaks out, the minute I leave that bench area, I can get ejected. Or in the NFL, before a play is even done, if I grab your face mask in a certain way, I can get a 15-yard penalty. Why is it that we know the fighters, when they walk in, they know the rules, and then the commission officials along with the refs come in to reiterate the rules? Do you think we need this soft warning and we can just get to the stern warning, or maybe even the point deduction? Because these fingers, it seems like the fighters are going to push the limits, and then eventually we get to the one that really hurts a fighter and they just can't continue. Do you like that process of soft warnings, stern warnings, point deduction, and I guess what I'm getting at is, could the fighters just get used to just always having their hands closed and not having them point up or do this or do that?
Well, the way the gloves are designed, it would be pretty hard to keep your hands closed the whole time and be able to wrestle. I do believe that hard warnings should be given in the dressing room and say, okay, I'm not going to warn you during the fight. I'm telling you right now, don't grab the fence. If you're leading with your fingers out there, I can take a point. I want you to know that. So this is a hard warning. So think about this stuff very clearly. Now, sometimes you have language barriers, and you're hoping that the Portuguese is clear enough that their interpreters tell them these things. But that's the part you don't know. We have a lot of international fighters now, but there's no excuse for breaking the rules. They all know the rules, so you just have to enforce them. And not every referee is going to enforce it the same way.
They're definitely going to have to learn the rules. If every pilot around the world who speaks different languages knows the language of English, because that's what the people at the tower communicate in, then the fighters and the coaches are going to have to learn those specific verbiage, of the language that these fights are being reffed in, which is English. So they can do it. I mean, I think we can all do it. And hopefully that curved glove is something that's coming sooner rather than later from you guys.
Yeah, we're working on it. And just as a quick pivot, I was able to run the clock for a couple tournaments this week in basketball, and Gonzaga is pretty special.
Yeah, I was going to ask them that.
We can talk over my other call, so if you want to, we can.
Oh, okay. A little overtime here. All right. So have you already filled out a bracket? You got your final four, Gonzaga and who else?
Well, first of all, as a NCAA clock operator, I can't fill out the brackets. But it's pretty hard to go against the chalk in most regions. And but the team that there's two teams that I got to see in person this week that I felt may surprise. BYU is a pretty good ball club, and they have a 7'2", 7'3" player that really looked good against Gonzaga. And Santa Barbara in the Big West could surprise a little bit, at least can win the first game, I think. So it's great to have tournaments back. I wish we would have had fans, and we will. But I'm anxious to watch the tournament. But the one thing I object to when they say that Indianapolis is a great place, there's no better place than having it here, with all the first-class hotel rooms, all the great venues we have, whether it's Mandalay, MGM, the Orleans, T-Mobile, Thomas and Mack. We could have had this tournament real easy right here in Las Vegas.
I agree. The NBA bubble could have occurred here as well. I was hoping it was going to be here last year too, but they went to Orlando. Though they pulled it off.
They did.
But when it comes to March Madness, entering that tournament, what do you think is the one intangible that you would stress if you were a coach? Does it come down to, is it the disciplined teams that always win? What's that one intangible?
It seems to me that it's a team that's been together with their guards, maybe their third year or seniors. I think that makes a big difference in the tournament, that they've been together instead of guys who are going to be one and out. Now, you're always going to have some teams that are with playing 1 year, but teams that have been together a little bit longer seem like they can get through the early rounds. It's just a special tournament, and I'm looking forward to it. How about Michigan State and UCLA as a play-in game?
I know.
Pretty crazy.
It's always more special, the tournament here in Vegas, when the UNLV Rebels are involved. When are we going to get back into that tournament? Now we've seen a little bit more of TJ Osselberger, but it's a little tough because of COVID and what went on. But do you feel like we're on that track? There's a lot of big recruits possibly coming in. Do you think we can get into that tournament as early as next year?
Well, they need another big guy. I don't know if DeJong will be back or not. They had a senior night for him, but all these kids can get an extra year now, so that sort of messes up with your recruiting if they all stay. I don't know how it'll work, but I think they're on the rise. But I miss us winning here. and I know it's not 1990 or 1991 anymore, but it's time. We should be every bit as good as San Diego State or any of the top teams in the Mountain West. Should not just be a mid-Mountain West team. I want to see us in the upper part of it and playing good enough to get in the tournament.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to that playing game, they don't have to travel this year. And, guys ask that question about what's important. I think if you're streaking, it's very, very important to just get hot at the right time. And with those teams not having to travel, that play-in game, the winners coming out of that are just going to be, maybe one game more fluid than the possible opponent. So keep an eye on those writing games this year.
Oh, no, absolutely. No travel, and they'll be in Indy. And, they're attractive matchups. I don't have the bracket in front of me, but I think that the winner of Michigan State, UCLA might be playing BYU.
Oh, wow. Okay. And going back to what you were saying, because of your involvement with the NCAA, have you just never filled out have you just never done an NCAA bracket with friends, or were you able to get one done earlier, in your earlier years? Were they even popular back then?
Well, I've been actually the shot clock operator for UNLV 30 plus years, so I haven't done it in a long time. I always have my favorites. What I used to do, we would have contests, and you could pick players, and as soon as you got the brackets, and whoever scored the most points, and so you had to figure out that whatever your Final Four would be, you want somebody on those teams, and so you can. It's a real tough contest. You get 6 players, and whoever gets the most points out of all these, you have a draft. I don't know if they even do that anymore, but it's a pretty cool way of doing it. You really have to know all the players and all the teams, and you have to study and trivia. It's actually before its time. I don't know if they can still do that or not, but you could.
Since you still have time, can I ask you a question about when do you think they'll fight in that stadium, Allegiant Stadium and T-Mobile, if you had to take a guess? I imagine you still work with these commissions. The commissions work under the guidelines of a particular state. We heard that Texas was almost a go, but then it didn't happen. But do you have any of that knowledge as well that you can share as far as a gut feeling, first the T-Mobile and then Allegiant Stadium?
Well, I believe today the governor is making 50% occupancy for restaurants. And I would think hopefully by the end of the year that they could go, or at least maybe for football, starting with the NFL, maybe they'll open it up completely. I'm anxious to see really right now, Garth Brooks is scheduled for July 10th at Allegiant, if they'll let him have the 60,000 tickets they sold. That'll be a good test for us to know in the future.
I got one more. You still okay on time?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. Update us again, because when they ask Dana, he'll kind of say, well, the rain and an open stadium and this and that and whatever. Hawaii. I know that you guys are basically, the show can be taken to any state in the United States and any province of Canada. That was the work of Marc Ratner who got that done, including 24 trips to Albany, a city he never thought he'd visit 24 times. But update us on Hawaii. They have the Blaisdell Arena, like 8,000. I believe the university has a 15,000 seat arena. And then, of course, the big Aloha Stadium if they wanted to do a stadium show. This is going back to the BJ Penn days. But now we have the Max Holloway days still. The guy looked tremendous in his last fight. Sounds like he'll probably get the winner of Ortega and Volkanovski. Can you update us on when do you think that can happen, if it can really happen, or is there just something there that we don't know behind the scenes that makes you say, George, it ain't ever going to happen?
Oh, no, I would never say that. I think that it's a natural for us. We'd love to do a fight with Max there. We are talking to the Convention and Tourist Bureau there to see what we can do. We've been talking to them for the last 18 months. So it's definitely can happen. I don't know what their protocols are right now, so it won't be happening this year. but yes, we would love to go there. And I've refereed in Aloha Stadium. I've been in Blaisdell. Yeah, there's another one, like you said, at the University of Hawaii. I think it holds around 12,000. So we could do a show there, but if we go there, we would probably go to Aloha if, in fact, protocols are right when we do it, and we can make some kind of deal with the tourism committee.
Well, we look forward to it, and I guess you're right. First things first, we need to get through what we're going through right now.
Right.
Otherwise, you'd be at the Mandalay Bay with us. But
the Mandalay Bay for hoops is a pretty special court. Whether it's the Aces or this tournament we just had there, it really works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Can't wait. I can't wait. We're ready. We're vaccinated, and hopefully you are as well.
I had my second shot 3 weeks ago, so I'm ready to travel whenever we get a fight. Maybe not in Abu Dhabi, but if we do it domestically, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you as always for another visit to MMA Junkie Radio, where we covered a lot. It's always great to have you, and hopefully we can do it again soon. And because there's so many sports that are going to open up, and you're always a wealth of knowledge, not just in combat sports, but all sports.
Well, thanks. And I was remiss. I didn't mention Steph. I was thinking Forrest Griffin, but Stephen Bonner Griffin was the fight I was thinking of, which is sort of our Hagler, Hearns, Hagler Leonard type thing.
Yeah, they went 3 hard rounds, man, and you can watch that fight 100 times and score it for somebody else. Now, in the Hagler Hearns, we obviously had our finish, but it was the 3 rounds matches up perfectly. So, yep. All right. Well, thank you again, sir, for your time.
So long.